Hello everyone. I'm sorry for the delay in the videos and also the assignments. I got an eye infection and it was not easy to read or to do a video. So I'm sorry for that. In fact, we had the videos needed for this assignment, but there was a small part that was left, and I had left it on purpose, and I thought that it would be unfair to send you an assignment without having this small part included. So here it is, and these are basically two very little points, not huge. The first one is the information gaps as effects, and the second one is centrifugal versus centripetal effects of media in society. These models are more important keeping in view the understanding of the society that these develop. Like the first one, which is information gaps as effects. Like information gap means that when we live in a society and different people have different social, economic, financial, educational structures, backgrounds, and those backgrounds give them, put them into an advantage or disadvantage in information reception. And in the same way, this hinders or promotes their knowledge capacity. So gap information means that information gap also helps or hinders somebody from progressing in daily life. The initial idea was information gap, which is simply saying that people who are more wealthy or monetarily safe are bound to get more information through the mass media, and once they get that information, they will be in a better position as social beings, which is true. The initial idea is the knowledge gap hypothesis. Like you get knowledge through information, and that information is vital for your success as a social being. Now, the initial idea was very simplistic. It just meant that if you have more financial resources, you are meant to have more technology, and that technology will give you an advantage in accessing information. But then later we thought that it's not simply information access, but rather other potentials. There were experiments made, like one of these famous television programs, Sesame Street, was sent to all the people. So it was ensured that it was translated into many languages. It got state support in viewing those programs, and all these things were done. But we came to know that the people who are more wealthy and socially successful, their kids were able to make more of the information that was sent to them, because they have other additional sources of information and communication too. So the idea here is that these are not information gaps, rather these are communication. This is a communication gap. It's not a knowledge gap, but it's a communication gap, and it doesn't really having information doesn't settle it. And then we get into certain another term which is known as communication potential. Like communication potential it depends on three things. Like somebody qualifies to be on the higher level of getting communication, needs three basic potential to be successful. The first one is personal characteristics. Personal characteristics could be personal ability like physical strength, or that could be also communication capacities, knowing of languages, and kind of some people are really smart in handling communication and like they have that capacity. The second one is the social position. Social position is that what kind of a household you belong to, how much technology can you afford, how much time do you have at hand, how much leisure do you have. The Greeks thought that civilization is only possible if people have leisure. That's why they used to use slaves, that slaves could ensure that the citizens, the Greeks, have enough time, leisure time to think and to create knowledge and to understand it. The third thing is what we call a communication, a social structure. What kind of a society is it? Like in some societies, even if you are knowledgeable and you have all the other traits, you might not be that successful, or people would not like what kind of people are respected in a society, how the status in a society boosts their what we call confidence. So then we come to what we call that whether these are information gap. This is an information gaps or gaps. There is this equation, which means that the potential that you have, and then the time you spend. Like whenever there is some new information which is needed, kind of a crisis information for a community, so the whole community will have the same urge to know. So potential will be the same, and they will somehow gather the information. Because we know that in the beginning, people with more resources access information, but then there is a saturation point where the information is no more needed, and they don't care about that. And so the information have-nots, who are at a lower level ladder of awareness, they get access to that information later. But since the information is saturated, they can it will take them a bit more time, but at the end they'll reach where the others stop. So that will somehow balance the flow of information. The knowledge gap will be balanced one way or another. The point is then one will be reaching earlier and the other a bit slow. And again there is this, this is what we can call also equalization, and also the flattening of the curve. So if there is a community interest which makes everybody learn something or to know about something, and then there is a conflict that is to be settled, and so there is a possibility that the haves and have-nots will get the information and their knowledge gap will be filled. But the problem here is that this presupposes kind of a smaller community where interests are not much divergent. Like knowledge gap will always exist in something like a city like Lahore, with more than 10 million, I think 12 million, almost 12 million people living in a city. You can't really handle information or communication or knowledge gaps. So the communication or knowledge haves will always remain haves, and have-nots will always remain have-nots. The only way that they could achieve is if somebody has better personal characteristics, that some people are really good in handling knowledge and some people are really into things that they would like to learn. So only that. So you will learn about a lot of success stories in your society, which prove the rule basically. Those exceptions that a very poor child got a gold medal and things like that. But at the end of the day, you'll be looking at a status quo when it comes to mediocrity, and that's where a society matters most. That the common people's success level is what matters. Some people, exceptional people with their personal characteristics, filling the knowledge gap and going up the ladder is no sign of equivalence. Basically, this is not an equality that is possible through that. So that's the knowledge gap hypothesis. There are a couple of diagrams that you can see, which consist of what I try to tell you. And then there is this very interesting phenomenon which we see as centripetal. Oops, sorry, I lost it. Centrifugal versus centripetal effects of media and society. I'm sure you'll know it, but centrifugal is the one that takes you away from society. Like it is not a disintegrative one, but it's rather like it's kind of the freer and more unnormative one. Centripetal is the one which brings you into a society, like it integrates a society. So these are the two forces which have their optimistic and pessimistic approaches. As you see in the diagram, as the centrifugal effect, and when you look at the optimistic vision, it's kind of freedom, change, and diversity. Like in a society which moves away from the trappings of traditional existence, they'll be more free, they'll be more innovative, and they'll also be change oriented, and there'll be more diversity, like acceptance of other ethnic groups or other ideas of differences. Lahore, for example, if you look at this city, it is kind of an example where this element exists. Like if you live in this city, there is more acceptance for diversity. It's not perfect, but in some quarters. Otherwise, in Pakistan, there is a lot that could be seen as the very opposite, like which is if you go down to the centripetal effect and the pessimistic view of the centripetal effect, which is dominance, uniformity, and conformity. Like this is most of the Pakistan. Like there is dominance of a single idea, there is dominance of a single religion, there is a dominance of a single cultural pattern, and which force you into conformity, and which really doesn't allow you to do much newer things. Sorry. And so it's uniformity and conformity in the worst form, and also which is centripetal, which is bringing you into the center. And then we have, for example, the optimistic vision of a centripetal media system, which is like effect, which is like order and harmony and integration, solidarity, and cultural identity. So people have the same cultural identities, and they always are proud of being somebody's, and like being Pakistani or being like studying at FC or whatever. That basically you adhere to something, and you have a cultural identity. You say, this is where I belong to, this is my country, nationalism and Islam, for example, religion, or whatever you can think about. And you have more solidarity, like in times of war people come together. So that's one of the media effects. Media has a role to play. It doesn't do it all the time. On the other hand, when we talked about centrifugal forces which give you freedom and novelty and diversity, And the pessimistic view about it is that of normlessness and loss of identity. Like normlessness means that you really don't adhere to the norms of your society. You think that these are useless. You don't need to follow them. You live in a void, like you follow the rules that are keeping your society together, but you feel like I'm supposed to do those, otherwise I won't do this. Just, you can think about it yourself and you'll see. And this kind of disregard for norm, like normlessness, also affects your identity very strongly. Who am I, basically, is one big question that every young man and woman is asking themselves around the globe. So somehow when we see is that that media is not the only player in this regard. In both the centripetal and centrifugal ideas, effects, media is not the deciding factor. Media is one of the players. And the same is true for the earlier idea of what we call information gaps. So information gaps are not built by media. It rather, information gaps are supported or ended in conjunction with other social, cultural, economic and political forces. So it's again what we call it depends. The idea of defining mass communication as it depends, like mass communication is not the all perfect and present harbinger of change. Rather, it works within a social cultural context, but it is not that unimportant to be ignored. And I'll just read down the 4 characteristics that we had. Like freedom of change is the centrifugal, optimistic, positive centrifugal value, where you're moving away from the routine through the media messages is somehow useful in building a positive society. On the pessimistic side, like media hegemony, global imperialism, like you are looking at Hollywood movie and you say, where am I? Like, this is no place to live, which is not true. You have seen scenes in the US and you wouldn't like to live there anymore. But that's what happens, like loss of identity, normlessness, and it leads to chaos in the mind, and which also manifests itself in reality. And then we come to the centripetal forces. So on a good day, it's integration, like it integrates you, it gives you an identity. You say, I am a Pakistani, I am a human being, I am part of the human denomination all over the globe. For example, if you are a globalist, or you are a Pakistani, you are a Pashtun, you are a Punjabi, you are a Muslim, or whosoever. So media gives you an identity which basically integrates you, values that you really like, and whenever they change also you know this is moving from one part to another. Whereas on the other hand, you have dominance, normlessness, where you don't know what to do and what not to do. I wouldn't like to buy too much time, and I won't like to end it without an ending. So thank you very much for watching this.